Hello, and welcome to a Habroxia 2 update conversation. I'm Barry Johnson, and I'm joined by the lead artist of Habroxia, Wayne Kubiak.
Hello!
Thanks for being here with me, man. As you can see, we've already got the video going, and this is the iiRcade release of the game, which we just put out, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. Time's really flown by, but you can see the machine itself here, and this is the mode select menu, which we'll get into a little bit later, which we added. And I think we're going to let it pause here, and then it's going to start the attract mode. So it'll just autoplay itself now, and we'll have like some bot-based gameplay, I guess you could say, where the computer is deciding where to move and just constantly shooting. It's sort of like we were inspired to do this because it was asked for by the iiRcade audience, which is have this arcade-like attract mode that attracts players to the machine if it's just left sitting there. Do you have any thoughts on this mode?
Doesn't this also help fight burn-in too? Especially for like older monitors.
That's a good point. I never thought of it in that regard.
You always go to those old arcades and there's like just a logo just burnt into that screen.
Sure, yeah. I wasn't lucky enough to visit too many arcades when I was young. There was one that was on a ferry that I'd go to visit Manitoulin Island to visit my grandparents, and there was this big boat we'd get on a ferry, and it would have this arcade with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and some shooter games, and I didn't often get many coins, so I remember when I was a kid I would go around and check the coin return trays to see if anyone left a quarter in there so I could grab that and play.
That's a very classic feeling. Like you just want to get those couple extra plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Even when I didn't get a chance to play, I would always go down there and just like watch the older kids playing, and was amazed by all the lights and the games and everything.
There was something always about arcades in general. Like there's that like community aspect to it, where even just like hanging out and watching people play and enjoying the excitement of it all always felt really good.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought of there was really a sense of community that we had, or gamers had, and it's the same, I guess, for physical game stores going away, where you'd meet people who loved games in this one spot physically, and a lot of the need for these locations and these spots have kind of gone away, and as a result, there's not really many, I guess, opportunities for community bonding of like-minded gamers anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like to some extent, there's still like the resurgence of arcades, and there's like LAN centers and stuff.
I guess internet cafes as well.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
We're just seeing the intro here now, which was, of course, lots of. I love the little one-piece arts that accompany the text in the story written by my partner Colin Moriarty, who's our writer and creative lead. And now I guess is a good time to talk briefly about this menu that we did. Before this patch, the game would just go straight into the campaign mode, and now we've sort of separated it out so you can go to the options beforehand, change your controls up, try the different game modes, the boost rush, the boss rush, and of course the mode which we just added, the arcade mode. So I guess we're just going to see some of these options here, and we also added the 2 new control methods. These are new to the update. Before, the twin stick was the only available control scheme. This is still my preferred control scheme. I love the analog sticks having that full sense of control, but we did add some new ones. So here's Arcade A, and this is if you can imagine the right stick being mapped to the 4 buttons, that's sort of the easiest explanation of this mode, and I think I just swapped there. And now we're going to go and just quickly demo level, I believe. This video was recorded in advance, if anyone's wondering if I'm not playing this live.
So it's always too hard to do things live and explain at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. You can see with this the sort of locked angle nature of this, where with a fully analog stick, you'd be exploring every degree of the 360 degree spectrum, but with this, it's locked to those 45 degree angles by those buttons. So here's arcade mode, or arcade controls B, which was what was the name of that game? Environment Eco Fighters, was that it? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, Eco Fighters.
Yeah, this was
With
inspired
the little
by
rotating like orb around you.
Exactly. Yeah, I loved how we don't have it in our game, but I loved how in that game you could use it like a wrecking ball and just like hit things with it as well.
Yeah, it's very R-type in that way.
So yeah, I didn't really explain it, but it's a one button to fire, and then you have the two shoulder buttons, I believe, for this L1 and R1 dictate the angle you're aiming at. So you hold one direction down to move it in either one direction or the other. Do you have any? I imagine are you the same as me, that you prefer the twin stick still?
Yeah, I mostly like the twin stick, but like also I've played so many shoot 'em ups that like pretty much like any control scheme can like be comfortable for me in that way. It was kind of an interesting thought experiment and challenge, kind of going back and forth with you figuring out these controls, just because everything was kind of baked into that twin stick experience. So making modes and like another alternate control schemes in that way that worked felt like I don't know, a different sort of challenge in that way.
Yeah, for sure.
A little less, I don't know, a little less fluid than the twin stick, but like offering a little bit more challenge, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had an interesting challenge in that way, in that we already had our gameplay done, and we knew we already had the 360 degree shooting in the game when we were coming up with these new control schemes. I'll just quickly mention that right now you're seeing these different controller layouts flash on the screen, and what I'm doing is I'm unplugging and plugging in different controllers in the game on the Steam version, and it's detecting the different controllers and swapping both the sprites on screen that you see for the controller layouts and also obviously the input in game. So we do now support a range of different controllers: PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S, Switch Pro controller, etc. And also keyboard support, which was a long-time request from Steam users. And it kind of goes back to our discussion we were just having in terms of the keyboard support, which was that the game was meant. Oh, I'll just quickly move on here. We're showing the 16 by 10 aspect ratio change, and this was done specifically, I believe, for Steam Deck users who requested. That's certainly how I've been using it myself, and you can change to 16 by 9 and 16 by 10 aspect ratios in the options menu yourself on the PC, like you just saw, but I also made it so that it'll detect if you're using the Steam Deck, and it'll switch to 16 by 10 on that device automatically. Okay. Sorry for the dead air here. I'm just checking my time stamp notes here quickly.
You're good.
So we've got. Well, let me throw a question at you here now that we've got a little bit of time, I think. So these are some questions I have. I have some from the audience, and I also have some that I came up with. This is the first one that I came up with, and it's just, what is the first arcade-style shooter that you ever played, and what do you remember about that experience when you first sat down with a shooter?
This might date me a little bit, but a lot of my very early gaming was on the Atari 2600, and
Okay.
the actual like first shoot 'em up in general that I remember playing is an SNK shooter called Vanguard.
Okay.
You kind of it's a little more advanced than like your like regular like Space Invaders or anything like that, because you're actually traversing through levels and there's a lot of environmental hazards and stuff like that. But Actually, it has a four-direction shooting where like you hold your
right
shot
on.
button and press the joystick in whatever direction you were going.
That kind of ties into our work on Habroxia then. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of come full circle in that way.
yeah. So here's some gameplay of the arcade mode that's just started up. And I selected that from the mode select menu there, but you can also go right into it from the campaign map should you choose. And this is if you've played Habroxia 2, maybe you'll be familiar with the New Game Plus and the New Game Plus modes that we incorporated. And arcade mode is sort of like New Game Plus point 0.5, I guess. I don't know. It scales in difficulty where it starts kind of on the difficulty level of New Game Plus, and then by the end it's closer to more of a New Game Plus difficulty. And what's unique about this mode really is that the way that you approach it as a player is it's forward moving. I don't know how to say it properly, but you when you finish a level, you go right into the next level. You don't have the option to go back and choose a different level or replay and visit all of the paths. You're locked into your path, and so because of that, the element of the main campaign where you can sort of build your ship up and make it as easy for yourself as you want it to be based on your approach is different. It's more of an arcade style. It's going to be hard and just try to beat it if you can type thing, and once you can, get your highest score.
Yeah, it's definitely more linear in that way, where you don't necessarily have like a back and forth. You can't like grind up your levels and get better gear in that way.
Yeah, that was sort of the idea of the mode, and that was the point. Is we wanted it to be a bit different like that, where you could play it in a different way, and also have it be more about getting a high score rather than building up your ship and having a story experience. It's more just a I don't know, arcade rush type thing.
Yeah. Aptly named.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to a next question while this boss fight plays out here, and then we can talk about scoring changes. So, do you have a favorite boss and or enemy type that you worked on in Habroxia 1 and 2?
I think boss. It's probably between the secret boss that we added, the very large. Well, most of the bosses I don't know particularly by name, but more developer name.
Yeah, same here. I think that one's called the Ancient Archive in the final naming scheme.
I think my actual file is just called Wide Boy.
Yeah, that's what the object is called in the code. So no worries there. I'm on the same page.
It was really interesting to do something that was a lot more large scale in that way, like almost like a full screen boss.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of moving parts, and I don't know, everything kind of comes together as one in that way, and I always like doing stuff like that.
Okay, so not to cut you off, but here we have the scoring, and you can see there's a time bonus there, and it's minus 9,000 on this little playthrough I was doing. So this was part of the scoring changes that I wanted to bring up. Is for this mode, there had to be some changes made so that it couldn't be gamed in a way that would be lame, so that people couldn't just endlessly fight a boss and not kill it to grind out like kills of asteroids or smaller enemies and stuff like that. So there was some balancing that went into that to make sure that felt right. And one of those things was the timing. So if you boost through a level, you'll get a shorter play time, and kill the boss fast, you'll get a shorter play time, and you'll get a bonus at the end. And if you take too long, you'll lose points for that at the end. And then the other thing I already alluded to is just changes to do with the bosses themselves and what they will spawn and how combos work. So combos don't take you won't build up a huge combo just from shooting rocks, and also bosses won't spawn the type of things that would allow you to get a big combo endlessly. Eventually they'll start spawning things that won't help you, like a steel rock that you can't kill, for example. Okay, so I think that's everything I had to say about scoring changes. So now we've got a good amount of time to fill out with questions. I'm going to go to the audience questions now, and this first one's from Twitter. It's from Roberto at Jehudi88, I think is how you pronounce that name. What new combat ideas, if any, are being explored for Habroxia 3? I've lately been looking back at a PS1 game, Philosama, I'm not sure how to say that, and how it combined a multitude of ideas from being a side-scrolling shmup to a on-rail shooter all at once. So first of all, do you know that game? Because I know you know all shooters, or most of them.
I'm at least like regularly familiar with it. I don't know if I ever put like a ton of time into it. But if I recall, there's like a bunch of different, I guess, like level viewpoints in that way, where you're not just like, well, I guess kind of like Habroxia in that way, where you're going horizontal and vertical. But I believe there's more of like a behind the back kind of view.
Yeah, cool. So that maybe a Star Fox sort of view or something like that.
Yeah, or like. Maybe even like an isometric view. It's been a little while since I played that. Kind of like was it Viewpoint?
I haven't played Viewpoint either, actually.
That's arcade Genesis. I think there might even be an NES port for that.
Okay, so back to the main point of his question. New combat ideas for Habroxia 3. Well, first of all, I think we should just get the cat out of the bag and say that before we make Habroxia 3, we are working on another Habroxia game, which is sort of like a prequel, I guess you could say, and it's going to be called Habroxia 0, or at least that's its code name for now. I'm pretty sure that's going to be its final name. But, so yeah, maybe some of these questions we answer as Habroxia 0 instead of 3, but we can kind of have it both ways if we want. With Habroxia... sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say dip into a little bit of both, but, we can always focus on what we have coming up next in that way.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of combat ideas, we're kind of doing something... I don't want to say simplified, but it's more arcadey. Speaking of arcade, it's a lower resolution game. It's meant to be an older school type approach at the Habroxia franchise, and there's going to be lots of new ideas in the game, I guess you could say. And Habroxia 3 will come later. We have ideas for Habroxia 3, but so much will change between now and when we make that game. Mainly our learnings from Habroxia 0 that there's not much point answering that now, I think, for Habroxia 3.
Yeah, so much can change between now and then.
And we don't know when then will be yet, so...
Yeah.
Okay. And that leads me to our next question, which is another Habroxia 3 question from Becco Bacon, maybe? Or BEKOBCN on Twitter. Habroxia 3, when and what new ideas could be implemented? So, you've just heard, we don't know the when yet. We do want to make it one day. A lot's gonna... It depends on what happens with Lilymo. It depends on how Habroxia 0 does. It depends on how me and Wayne are both feeling personally in terms of motivation. So we can't tell you when yet, but we both are excited to work on that, and we both have lots of ideas. Okay, let me check these timestamps real quick to make sure I'm not gonna miss anything. We got the score. Yeah, we're good for a little... Oh, no, we're about to come up on the leaderboard, I think, so maybe we can touch on that quickly. So we're about to... I think I just killed myself intentionally, if I remember the video correctly. But here you can see we have the online leaderboard, which we've added to Steam, Xbox, PS4, and PS5 so far. And we also are posting the people who have the top scores on the lilymo.com website if you want to check that out and see your name up there. And yeah, I think we can go on to questions, because that's about it. Oh, and I will look into getting the leaderboards working on Switch as well. That's something I want to get going, but we just got so many balls spinning and I couldn't get it done at the time. It seemed to make sense to release it without the online leaderboards and just incorporate offline leaderboards at this time. Okay. Back to the audience questions. Okay, are there any plans or interest in taking the world of Habroxia to a different genre? Well, let's go to you first. What do you think about that? Different genres, same world.
In general, like we slightly touched on that with Perils of Baking, just bringing Sabrina in for a little bit of platforming, and like I don't know, I wouldn't mind exploring more styles like that, where it's more like a side game run and gun, or if we were gonna like add levels like that to another game, I feel like that would be interesting.
I agree, and I'll also say that maybe not so much a genre change from Habroxia 1 to 2, but with Habroxia 0, we are exploring melding elements of different genres into it in a way, which we're excited to share more about that game soon. Okay. And then, is Habroxia 3 happening? From Bright Sky 100 on Twitter. Yes, we're not working on Habroxia 3. We're talking about it. We've been talking about it and discussing ideas since Habroxia 2, but Habroxia 0 first, and then Habroxia 3 is the plan. Okay, and then this is the final Twitter question. Can you please not make the Habroxia 1 title update on Xbox difficult? From Chivo 2006. So this is a topic I've read all of the feedback from this. There's been some people who weren't happy that we added new achievements to Habroxia 2 on Xbox. They felt that, how do I put this? They didn't like that they there's people who value having 100% achievements in a game. And when you add new achievements that make it harder and they feel like they might not be able to earn them, they get upset about that. And I've received a lot of feedback about that. I appreciate Chivo here being polite in his question, because some people were kind of rude about this, but I'll say that we don't plan to add new achievements for Habroxia 1 on Xbox. We plan to have a new list for PS5 and Steam when it launches there, which we plan to do. We plan to release Habroxia 1 on Steam and Series X and PS5 and update it on all these platforms, because I haven't even mentioned that. I realized I'm answering this question, we haven't even said anything about that, but we are planning to do that. And I'll come up with some new achievements for the new platforms, but we won't change the old lists, and we'll leave them as is. Okay, so the video is ended here, Wayne, as you've seen, but I'll add some extra footage to fill the extra time.
Excellent.
Are you okay with continuing on for a bit?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, good. So we have a series of questions from one more person. It's 616 Entertainment from the Last Stand Media Discord, and there's a lot of questions here. Let's get into it. Were there any ideas too big for Habroxia 2, I shorthanded it on my nose here, that needed to be pared down? Does anything come to mind to you here about that?
With every game, like there's always like things that don't necessarily make the cut, but like it's more just like more content. Like we wanted to add more bosses, we wanted to add more environments and stuff like that, and then we kind of had to cut that down a little bit so we could get it launched in like a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, that's basically all that comes to mind to me as well. I think when we originally started making Habroxia 2 so long ago, it was supposed to be it started as a big update or a DX edition of Habroxia 1, and it evolved. So I think because of the fact that it started that way and became a sequel, we kind of we had a limited scope at first, and we kind of just ran with it while we were going, and I think because of that we kind of got most of the features and things done that we wanted to. If we had started out as a broad brush brainstorm at the beginning, like as this is going to be a new entry, we might have had a bunch of things that just never happened because of that. But I think we did pretty well. I think we did pretty well with that project, personally.
Yeah, and weren't we also running up close to the end of the Vita lifespan, so we could get that on the Vita as well?
Yeah, that's right. It was the deadline for submissions of physical games on the Vita. That's what it was. we were running up real close to that where well, like you said, also the Vita itself, because that support did get shut down not long after. But the big time hurdle for us on that project was the being able to release on Vita physically. So that was a timeline thing for us there. Okay. Do we have any visions of what to do with Habroxia 3? Yeah, I think we've talked about that on this. Sorry. So I'll move on to what were the main visual inspirations for the levels in Habroxia 2?
Do you want me to start off on this one?
Oh, I think this one's I think you can handle this one.
Okay. It is, as far as moving to Habroxia 2 from 1, I kind of wanted to expand what the world essentially looked more like, versus Habroxia 1 is a lot more just like space, just space everywhere.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do a little bit more like organic, environmental kind of work. And just like, I don't know, make the universe feel a little bit more alive instead of just, a grandiose space battle. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just like, give that more larger variety in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved all the like cave levels and mechanical sections and all that. It provided a great brush for me to work with when I'm like laying out these blocks and stuff of where the walls and stuff will be. Like having all these themes sort of like inspires you of what it'll look like. Okay.
And I think kind of going forward with like future Habroxia releases, I definitely like to explore a little bit more of that, like what more like the planets would look like, and just do even more with the universe in that way.
Hell yeah. Okay. And then I think this is the final one. Was it a pain in the ass to design levels that are part vertical and part horizontal? So I can start with this one. That was something that, like, very early on I tackled with Habroxia 1, where it was a hurdle then to make it work, I guess. And I think I changed the code of how that actually does work between 1 and 2, but it wasn't so much an issue because I kind of figured it out early with Habroxia 1, the main, like, at least, like, making it run like that. There is some weirdness when you're trying to have enemies that are both horizontal and vertical, and knowing when to change them and how much of the screen's being used and how fast they should travel, these sort of things, I guess. What about you on in terms of the art? Was that something that was weird to do, having all these different types of walls that are going in all these directions?
Visually, like, both yes and no. Some of it was wrapping a lot of the tiles that I was making for them in ways that I could connect at both corners and kind of like round things off in that way. And it also kind of pushed a few of the environmental stuff, like especially like the newer stuff, to more of like a horizontal versus when you were like in space and doing like the space stations and stuff like that. It allowed a little bit more freedom as far as like the vertical sections.
Makes sense. Okay, I have some more questions here, but I'm gonna skip most of them and just ask you the final one I had, because we've been going longer than expected. What is a genre or style of game that you haven't worked on yet that you would like to work on?
This is kind of a double-edged sword for me. I kind of want to make a Metroidvania, but also I don't want to make one because there's just so many assets and like a very long development cycle involved in making something like that.
For sure, yeah. We have been, Henry and I have talked about one that we want to work on someday, and it's hopefully we'll work on it in not too distant future. But yeah, that's a similar one for me, where I know it's going to take us a while to make it, so we need to be in a position to be able to support that, like financially and the time wise. But for sure, that's one I want to work on as well.
I think it's also the kind of genre that leads to having a little bit of a larger team versus like just a couple people, unless you're like really paring down both like the visuals and like the level design and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, I think we can wrap it up there. And thanks so much for your time. And thanks everyone for watching or listening.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and I don't know, thank you too, Barry. Like, I don't know, it's always fun like getting to sit down and chat about things.
Yeah, we haven't talked in a while, so it's good to hear from you as well, man.